So for this video, we're going to be looking at the Queen of Cups. And the Queen of Cups is, we're just going to really go deep into this card. There's a lot to it. But I want to start out with the RWS card, then we'll branch off, look at some different cards, make some different connections. But on the RWS card, she's sitting on the beach. And I find that interesting that she's sitting there on the beach. She's looking down really caringly at this cup, but she's facing the ocean. We know that water represents emotions. So she's facing all of these emotions. She's not turned away, and she's just sitting there waiting. And as the tide comes in, the moon brings in the tide, and all these emotions she's confronted with, she's able to be grounded in those situations, to be stable and to provide support. She's actually sitting on top of these pebbles or stones. And I find that that really does add to the fact that she is able to hold space, because she's not going to be swept away. She has a firm foundation. So she's not sitting on the sand, and she doesn't take on that energy. And I find that that's a great quality for a leader, and it really does help just lift people up and really boost people when they're in the presence of someone like this. So I really appreciate that. There's a really cool story between the Knight of Cups and the Queen of Cups. And I'm going to tell that story. But if you haven't watched my video on the Knight of Cups, I think it's a really good video, and I think it really would add to this because they kind of come together. So to start this story off, I want to talk about the Hangman card, and I want to talk about the Queen of Cups. Now, specifically, I want to look at the Thoth system, because the Thoth system is made with this special type of geometry called projective geometry, where this type of art allows you to fuse these cards together, in a sense, to place these cards on top of each other and blend them. So Lady Frida Harris, when she drew the card, she specifically did it for that purpose. And I love playing around with especially the major arcana and looking at this. So if we take the Hangman and we take the Queen of Cups and we place the Hangman on top, it looks like the Hangman is being dipped inside of the little pond that's in front of the Queen of Cups. And I find that that's a really beautiful connection. It reminds me of the story of Achilles. And if you don't know that story, I'll briefly touch on it. So Achilles was this great warrior, this ancient legendary warrior. He seemed like he just was indestructible, really. And as the story goes, he was protected by his mother. His mother, when he was little, dipped him into the river Styx, and he was immersed into the underworld and transformed. So I love this card by the 78 Tarot Elemental, because I think it kind of tells that story, even though I don't think that's what it was meant to do. But it looks like the Hangman is immersed inside of all this water and going through that transformation, really being in the underworld and gaining new perspective. Now, I like to see this as the Knight, because when she dipped him into the river Styx, his foot was exposed. So his mother was actually a water goddess of all things, right? And she dips him into this river. She protects him with this spell, with this power, and his foot's exposed so it doesn't get protected. And when he goes out in battle one day, he's vulnerable. He has his weak spot, and an arrow strikes him in that. And so that's where we get the saying, your Achilles tendon, right? So you have your Achilles tendon right there on your in the back of your foot. So that is interesting, because the Knight of Cups is vulnerable. He has these weak spots, and that's what allows him to be transformed, because he goes into situations and he can work on his ego due to the things that affect him, the things that are triggering him, the things that are causing him to really rethink his life and to go through this alchemical process of change, like I talked about in the other video. So there's this link. So how does the Queen of Cups fit in there? Well, she protects him. She guides him on his journey. And so I want to move on here. I want to talk about the chalice that she's looking at, the cup that she's looking at. Now, on the RWS card, it looks like they're the handles made out of these angels. Now, that's very subtle. Now, I find that the RWS can be very subtle and kind of work on our subconscious a little bit. But if we look at that cup overall, to me, it looks like a crab. It looks like these claws, right? And that's because the Queen of Cups is actually connected to the sign of Cancer. Now, the Thoth system is more direct, and it really shows us that connection. It shows us that crayfish or crab, like right there, connects that. But either way, the sign of Cancer, it really does match the Queen's energy of being supportive, nurturing, overall a guide. But there's more to it. The Queen of Cups also has another connection that I find really interesting, because if we look at the PetraK Tarot, I'll put an image of it up. This is a great Thoth-based deck too, by the way. If we look at this deck, we can see that there's this bull in the background. Now, why is that there? Why is that bull in the background of this card? And I thought about that, and I also thought about the fact that the Queen of Cups is fixed water. So if we look at the Celestial Tarot, I'll put that up here. We look at the Celestial Tarot, we can see that it says fixed water. Now, Cancer is not a fixed sign. So where does this fixed energy come from? It comes from Taurus, which is the bull. So Taurus is represented by a bull, and that is why that's on that cup. I'm sorry, that is why that's on that card. Now, that connects us to another card, which is the Empress. There are tons of connections between the Empress and the Queen of Cups. Let's just look at all of the details that point them to each other. So the Queen of Cups is holding a flower in her right hand. The Empress is holding a flower in her right hand. They both have birds on their right side. Now, the bird that's on the Thoth system is an ibis, and that ibis represents the goddess Isis. So they're both connected to the goddess Isis, which is the moon goddess, and they're both connected to the moon. You can see the moon on both cards. The moon is connected to our emotions. It's connected to a nurturing side, and I think that that fits really well. Now let's focus on the Empress for a little while, because it really does add layers to this, as if we haven't added enough layers already, but it really adds some more to it. So let's push even further here. So the Empress, if we look at that on the Thoth system, we can see that the Empress has this symbol down here, which is a Hebrew sign for the word Daleth, which means door. So the Empress is really a vessel, and that vessel is a doorway. It provides an opening for us to come out of a transformation. We're basically reborn, right? It also is a guide on our path. And in order to understand that, we need to look at another card. So let's look at the Moon card on the Thoth system. So if we look at the Moon card on the Thoth system, right here, bam, right in the middle, you see all those symbols? I'll put a closer image of it up. You see all those symbols? What symbol is that? Does that symbol look familiar? That is the symbol that is on, guess what? The Empress, Daleth, door. So that pathway of the Moon card is like this pathway leading to our transformation. We make progress. We have these two guards that are on the side, right? That's Anubis. Basically, he is guarding the pathway. He kind of weighs the hearts of man to make sure that they're ready for the next step. But we're guided on that pathway by, like I said, the Empress. The Empress is always there. We are always supported. Now, that's just another aspect. And what's cool is if you take the Thoth system and you use that projective geometry, bam, look at that connection with the Empress and the Moon card. Just a beautiful connection there. It looks like she's almost like Isis, like that kind of connection there. I just find that it's just absolutely fascinating. All the crazy details that you can find out by just digging deep into these systems. Now, taking it a step further, right? Let's go back to the Temperance card. Now, I talked about the Temperance card in detail in the Knight of Cups video. And like I said, go watch that because it adds some details to this. But I talked about that. And one of the things I talked about was that on that vessel in front of the art card and the Temperance card, on that vessel, you see the symbol for death. That's because death is inside of that vessel, helping with the transformation. But what is the vessel, right? I think I hinted on it earlier. But what is the vessel? The vessel is the Empress. Now, if we look at the Empress, she has on her garment here bees. And we can clearly see that on the Tabula Mundi. So if we look at the Tabula Mundi, we can see that on the Empress card, there are these bees, right? Where else are those bees? Hovering over that vessel on the art card. She is the vessel that holds our transformation and holds space and provides that space for our transformation. Now, I want to talk about some other things here. I want to talk about the element that I want to talk about that connects to this. Now, I know that if you're new to my channel, you may not know a lot about what I do. There's a video that I did called Why the Periodic Table, which might help you understand it. But basically, I connect the tarot cards to not just the elements like earth, fire, air, and water, but I also connect it to the elements on the periodic table. And for this card, it lines up with bismuth on the periodic table. Now, I find like this is a fascinating connection. Now, if we look at bismuth, I have a piece right here, but if we look at it closely, we can see that it has all these different colors because of the way it oxidizes. And we can see that there's some blue there. Now, that blue, I feel, it really does connect to the energy of water, to the Queen of Cups card. And then we have green, which is Taurus, and really connects to the Empress. I really find that ties these two things together. And then that pink in there, which really does place emphasis on the feminine quality, that really does connect these two cards. And I find that all these colors just fit that whole story. And I look at this and I think, wow, yeah, this tells a story. Bismuth was mistaken for lead a lot in ancient times. And in Rome, I talked about how, in my last video, I talked about how the Romans used lead for their pipes. But now in modern days, we've actually replaced a lot of the lead in a lot of applications with bismuth to hold water because it doesn't leach into the water. Now, another thing that's really cool about this is that if you look at the alchemical symbol for bismuth, the alchemical symbol for bismuth is actually looks like this. Now, what does that look like? It looks like the sign for Taurus, and it actually is. It is a modified sign for Taurus. So bismuth is connected alchemically. The alchemist just naturally decided to connect this one to Taurus. So I find that really interesting. This is also one of the least diamagnetic metals on the periodic table. That means that it does not attract other metals to it. It's not going to take on their energy, just like the Queen of Cups. So I find that it shares a lot of qualities with the Queen of Cups. So I know that all this information, we went all over the place, but I find that the story is absolutely beautiful. The transformation of the knight, the story of Achilles, the fact that the Queen of Cups is holding this space and providing this support for this transformation. I think we all need that. So thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Will. This is PetraK Tarot. I'll see you next time.